So I'm going to try my best to be quick with it, and I'm going to put it on the LinkedIn group, the Weatherford LinkedIn group, and I might post it on my social as well. But taking a look at this, we have the 5 process groups, and then we have the 10 knowledge areas. So it's like making a matrix of stuff. Process groups, and then the knowledge areas. You remember the mnemonic? I saw what? 6 chipmunks. Quietly roasting, coffee, reading, poetry, stories. Good. Now, if we make a matrix of this stuff by drawing the lines down that way, okay, and going that way, we are going to create a grid that is so valuable to project managers who have mastered it, because it just makes you feel really powerful. So this is integration right here, okay? This is scope, this is schedule, this is cost, this is quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder. When you begin to think about what happens in integration that is in the initiating process group, the answer is you develop a project charter. So there are 2 things you need to look at. This book, page 126, it has all of the process groups and the processes in it. So you can see develop project charter. Do you see that, develop project charter? That's just developing the charter that you folks put into your tool. So you develop a project charter, and that's what the process does. And if you look up there at the junction of integration and initiating, it tells you what exactly develop project charter is. So authorize the project and the project manager. And I'm just going to abbreviate it, DPC. DPC just stands for Develop Project Charter. You folks know what a project charter is, obviously.
Yes, but they took it away.
No. So that's really what it is. We're going to bring it back. Somehow, there needs to be a charter. So that's Develop Project Charter. If you take a look going that way, you can fill in this table by integration, or you can fill in this table going, what do I do in initiating? As a project manager, wouldn't it be dumb for you just to start doing the project without knowing your stakeholders? It would be. So if we follow this progression, what do I do in initiating the project? The whole of this place is blank. Watch this, I'm going to give you a shortcut. The whole of this place here is blank, so we have nothing here. Let's make that clear, nothing here. But at the bottom, what does it say? Identifying project influencers and end users. And in your purple book, what does it say that process is right down here? What's the full thing? What does it say?
Project stakeholders.
So this is stakeholders, but what do you have in this box?
Identify stakeholders.
There you go. I'm being very intentional about the identify stakeholders. And this is where you create a stakeholder register. Doesn't that make sense? You're in the beginning of the project, you should develop the project charter, and you should identify stakeholders. It's just common sense. Now, if you move into planning, in planning we have a number of things we do in planning, but I'm going to be very quick about it. In planning, you develop an overarching project management plan. So we say, develop project management plan. And your project management plan is a container for everything that you plan. Everything you plan resides in a big old plan called the project management plan. Now, I'm not talking about Microsoft Project. I'm talking about a plan that has your project schedule in it, it has your scope in it, it has your cost, it has your quality plans, it has your resource plans. It has communication plans, stakeholder plans, risk plans, everything. It's called a project management plan. Now, this project management plan is going to be a collection, watch this, of everything that you're going to do in these subsidiary places. What am I talking about? Well, PMI should as well call their name the Project Planning Institute, because it's so big on planning, and that's okay. We have plan, what's this called? Scope. So they have plan, scope, management. Let me give you a formula to remember all of these. Just take this configuration. Plan, X, management, where X is equal to the knowledge area name. The knowledge area name, we're just going to plug the knowledge area name into this configuration, and then we're going to have all those things you're looking at in your book, in your purple book. Now, I want to make it clear, I don't want you to memorize this. You don't have to cram it, but you need to understand. For every knowledge area, we need to plan every knowledge area. So Robin came in here a few moments ago and he was showing us, this is what we're going to do for scope, right? But he didn't just make that up. There's a plan, okay, for scope, we're going to fill this document in. So we have that for scope. We have this for schedule, plan, schedule, management. We have this for cost, plan, cost. What's the M? Management. We have it for quality.
Plan quality.
You got the memo. And quality management. Come on, I don't say so bored. Plan resource management.
Plan communication.
And communications management.
Plan risk.
There you go.
Come on, say it with some gusto.
There you go, with some gusto, exactly. What's
Plan
this?
procurement.
Plan procurement management.
Plan
So
stakeholder.
this one is a curveball. We plan stakeholder what? Engagement. Now PMI said, you can't manage your stakeholders. Sometimes they're above you in the organization. You gotta manage their engagement. Or plan their engagement. So plan stakeholder engagement versus plan stakeholder management. So there we have it. Now, under each of these areas, there's a logical flow to what we do, right? So in scope, we collect the requirements. First, CR, collect requirements. But it's not enough to have the requirements. You need to know the work to get those requirements done. It's like my example yesterday. I want a chicken sandwich. Okay. Oh, by the way, I want it done from scratch. Uh-oh, now we have a bunch of scope because of that requirement. So we now have to define the scope that is going to deliver the requirement. You get it? So the requirement begets scope. Someone gives you this outlandish requirement, and you're like, oh my goodness, you know how much coding that's going to take? It's an example of requirements begetting scope. So collect requirements is the requirement from the customer. Define scope is the work we need to do to get the requirement done. And then we have create WBS. We talked about this, create WBS. So there's a flow to this. They kind of feed into each other. Because we plan scope management, we know how to collect our requirement. We've got a defined scope approach, and then we know that the WBS comes next. Moving into schedule, we plan schedule management. But one of the first things you should do with your team is define the activities. Your team will define the activities, then they will sequence the activities. Sequence activities just means arrange them in logical order of occurrence, right? And then we will estimate activity durations, EAD, and then we will put that all together and develop schedule. How many of you use Microsoft Project? Or some other scheduling tool, right? Now, if you use a scheduling tool, you already do this. You just don't call it all this stuff. Like there's someone here yesterday that said, all of this is just labels. I already know a lot of it, but I'm here to learn the labels. These are the labels. So plan schedule management, define activities, sequence activities, estimate activity duration, develop schedule. Moving on to cost, we plan cost management, but then we estimate costs, and then we determine the budget. Do you remember what I told you yesterday? Difference between estimate cost and determine budget is what? Estimate cost is estimating each activity. Determine budget is rolling everything up to a final total. So I hope you're tracking, because all I'm doing is covering all of this stuff, giving you the lingo in the book. What page is it on again? 126, thank you. All right, so page 126.
Where would you put your acceptance criteria? Would that be in scope or?
Exactly, so it's gonna be right here. So in the collect requirements, you want the acceptance criteria. There's a document I showed you yesterday, the requirements traceability matrix. You wanna make sure that you begin asking, okay, what's the acceptance criteria for this requirement? Okay? Moving into quality, we have plan quality management, is the only thing there. Going into resources, we have plan resource management, and then we have estimate, what do you see in your book? Estimate activity what? Estimate activity,
Resources.
thank you, resources. Are you tracking on that page 120 what? 126. So I'm not really after you memorizing the names. I need you to understand what is being done. And the way to get what is being done is what Michael asked about, which is this. So right now we are on decide on resource quantity and type. Okay? Then we have plan communications management. Do you know what we mean when we say plan? It could be a simple one-liner, like this, all of this stuff. It could be to communicate with a customer, we'll use email for this, meetings for this, reports for this, boom, plan done. It doesn't have to be a big old 8.5 by 11, it could be a one-liner. So it could be, we're going to communicate with the customer primarily by email, or we're going to communicate with the customer primarily in meetings. Now, this one has got a lot of stuff in it because it's risk. Once you have planned risk management, you identify the risks, you perform a qualitative risk analysis, you perform a quantitative risk analysis, and then you plan the response, plan risk responses. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that we do in risk, which is one of the biggest areas. But it makes sense because if the risk kills the project, then you're in trouble. All right, so we want to identify the risk, do a qualitative, do a quantitative in some instances. The PMI tell you that is optional, so you don't have to always do quantitative. There's going to be some small projects you don't have to, and then we plan the risk responses. Procurement, there's just one thing there. Stakeholder, there's just one thing there. Boom. Are we done? I think we're done with planning.
We are.
But does it make sense, what all that I went through? Is there any of them that you got a question on?
Can you not combine quantitative and qualitative risk analysis with that risk registry?
Yeah, so to be quite honest, the PMI say quantitative is optional because not everyone cares about the monetary impact of a risk. So you could say, I'm only doing qualitative. You know, to be quite honest, some projects, it's a waste of time. The project is over by the time you're done with the quantitative. You know what I mean? But if it's a very high dollar, like some projects that are done in corporate, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, and then it all adds up. So if I was in a PMO and I had like 200 million worth of project, like in our PMO in corporate, I might choose to do a quantitative on a lot of them, just to make sure that aggregate, I'm not gonna lose out, or I'm not gonna be in trouble. Because all you need is 3 or 4 distressed high value projects. So you really should be thinking about the quantitative and taking steps to mitigate, you know, at a minimum, some of those risks. Great question, all right. Let's move into executing so I can get you out of here real quick. All right, going into executing, there's 2 things that happen in integration, and it's direct and manage the project work, which is a no-brainer for you folks, and then manage project knowledge. So what is manage project knowledge? Just lessons learned. Lessons learned, you're collecting the lessons learned, but you're putting them back into the company. So Jeff's infamous meeting, it's actually good because that's where we can collect those lessons and we put them back into production. We make it available, we publicize it. So managed project knowledge is two things. It's getting the lessons and making sure that, hey, Phil, I made this mistake, you don't make it. That's what that is. The good news about this is we have a lot of blanks in executing. So executing is the doing. We don't have anything here or here or here. And we get into quality. And in quality, we already know this because we do it, right? What do we do here? We manage quality. What does manage quality mean? It sounds ambiguous. Manage quality is where you're executing on your quality management plan through audits. We know what audits are, don't we? We do that a lot here. So an audit is the assurance that the quality standards are being met. So we call it quality assurance. The PMI calls it managing quality. All right, resources, we've got a bunch of things we do here. We have the acquire the resources, right? And this could be human resources or what?
Tangible.
Tangible, like
PCs.
that would be equipment and materials, right? So we acquire the resources. It includes your team members as well. Then we develop the team. And I asked you yesterday, how do you develop your team members? And you said, take them for offsites, take them out of production into maybe an offsite, a team building exercise, happy hour, whatever. And then we have managed team. And managed team is really code for just lead the team, give them feedback, help them to grow. All right? Any questions about any of these? Does it make sense? Cool. Moving on to communications. This just says manage communications. What does it say manage communications is up there? What does it say?
Distributing needed information through hard copy and in meetings.
Fantastic. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Hard copy.
Hard copy, electronic, all that stuff. Good. What about this? Two things we do here, or is it one thing? One thing we do here, when you have the risk responses, you now need to carry them out. We call it implement risk responses. Okay? When it comes to procurements, we have conduct procurements. What does this mean, conducting procurement? It means that you're getting the proposals and you are review. How many of you review proposals here? You've been involved in looking at a vendor's proposal and saying, that's great.
Somewhat.
A little bit?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Cool. So you have criteria that you use. This is where you apply the criteria. And you could look at price. What else do you look at when you're looking at a proposal?
Form, fit,
Time.
function.
A lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And then you could actually use a blind bidding process where the names of the people bidding isn't on it, just to make it more fair. And at the end of the day, you're gonna get a selected seller, and that's the major thing you want from conduct procurements. And then last but not least, with a stakeholder, we have manage, it's not manage stakeholder, it's manage their engagement. So manage stakeholder engagement. Have you ever had to tell a stakeholder, whoa, too much firepower, calm down, actually need your input further along? Or are you of the opinion that that's wishful thinking? My stakeholders are so disengaged. Yes, Molly?
So on the procurement stage, I know you said blind, but I know for a fact I have a couple of vendors that I have a real good working relationship. I prefer not to be blind in that process because their level of quality and feedback is, you know, I couldn't get some of my
Yeah.
projects done on time or handle problems without their
Yeah,
level, that level.
Gotcha. Absolutely. So there's a place. A lot of the blind bidding is for certain project types. But if you've got a so they are stakeholders. If you've got a vendor, thank you, a vendor that is killing it, and you want to engage that vendor again, absolutely. Then don't make it a blind bid. That wouldn't make sense. But it has its place. Government is quite popular with that, but in our environment, we can do anything that we feel is best. So yeah, just have an open kind of bidding thing, but you also want to bear in mind there's a place for RFPs, request for the best proposal, right? You want to take a look at the best proposal, but there's actually a place based on historical information that cuts out the need for a laborious bidding process. You know, anyway, more on that later. So yeah, sometimes it doesn't make sense. All right, any questions on executing? Is it making sense?
Yeah.
Try my best to get you out of here ASAP.
We-
Just a few more minutes.
We're lucky because we have Project Central. I couldn't
Exactly.
imagine a company that doesn't, I mean, we have that structure
Yeah.
there for us.
Mhm.
We're filling in everything. And
Yeah.
it's working
Yeah.
just a good process.
Uh-huh. And honestly, there's some, not even companies, let's look inward. There's some places in our firm here that don't have that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish I could just make another instance of it and give it to you, because I know you get so much value from it. All right, let's go to monitoring and controlling and get you out of here, all right? So, monitoring and controlling, we have monitor and control projects, what?
Work.
Work. Seems like only one person's tracking with me here. Come on now, track with me, help me. All right, so monitor and control project work, this is where you get your reports generated. All those reports, the dreaded meeting with Jeff, the report, this is where you would generate that report. And then we have perform integrated what? Change control. What do you think we do here?
PCO.
What's that?
We do PCO.
What does PCO stand for again?
Project
Change
Change
Order.
Order.
Change orders, sometimes those are good because they may give you additional cash, revenues, sometimes, it depends, right? So change order, but let's move over to scope. I want to show you a very cheap trick. The same way I showed you Plan X management, there's a configuration of control, whatever the knowledge area name is, right? So we have control something here, control something here, control something here, control something here, control something here.
Monitor.
Here we have an M, and I'll explain why. Monitor. We also have a monitor here, and we have a monitor here. So if you think about it, it's kind of easy. It's almost mathematical. So we have validate scope. Validate scope is an anomaly, but that is where your customer is checking the deliverables. So we had the sprint review yesterday. In this world, where Ed would come in and look at the final thing and accept it, that will be validate scope in this world of predictive. Then we have control scope, goal plating, scope creep. You know what goal plating is? When a team member gets a bright idea to do extra that the customer didn't ask for. That ever happened to you? Team member adding extra, why are you doing this? Oh, I just want to look good. They want to look good, but they end up gold plating and that leads to scope creep. So we're trying to prevent that in this process. Then we have control schedule. We have control cost, where you are preventing cost overruns and schedule overruns. Control quality. Where do you think you are inspecting your deliverable? Here, control quality. What about control resources? This is where you are controlling your physical resources. This is not about the humans at this point. This is about the physical resources only. So important to remember that. Because we don't use the word control for humans. Which is why here we have monitor communications, because we don't control people. Well, we're not supposed to try to control people. Monitor risk, right? This one is control procurement, and that's where you are checking to make sure the vendor is giving you what you paid for. And last but not least, we have monitor stakeholder engagement. Is it kind of making sense? Again, you do not have to cram this. It will be valueless on the exam, you cram in this stuff. So this is about understanding the flow. And I'm recording it so that you can relive it, because usually when you've been in the class and you listen again, it makes more sense than watching an old one that I've done before. Finally, we have close project or phase. You could close out a phase in the project or the project as a whole. And that's it. Thank you, Jeff, if you can stop it. Awesome. So I will share